We are back, your favorite New York Rangers podcast from the New York Post, up in the blue seats. As always, I'm Mollie Walker, and I'm joined by the great Larry Brooks and former Ranger Brian Boyle. Guys, somehow we have even more to catch up on than we did last time. It's been a never-ending news cycle over here in New York, and as it's gone on, the losses have piled up more and more on the Rangers. Most recently, a 2-1 loss to the last place Blackhawks Monday at the Garden, and there were boos. Heavy, heavy boos. But before we get into all that, let's go through the news first. Captain Jacob Trouba, the 28th captain in Rangers history, met the same fate as the 26th and the 27th. Ryan Callahan and Ryan McDonough getting traded mid-season. It happened on Friday before the Penguins game, started with Trouba being held out for roster management purposes, and then a trade was completed. Trouba went to the Ducks in exchange for defenseman Urho Vakanainen and a conditional fourth-round pick in 2025, which will be the lower of the Ducks' two picks in that round. And Anaheim takes on the entire $8 million cap charge, which is great for the Rangers. Larry, you had reported that two trades were put in front of Trouba to choose from, and he clearly went with Anaheim. I thought this quote from his introductory press conference for the Ducks was pretty telling of how everything went down in his eyes. He said, yesterday morning, it was accept this trade or we're scratching you. I said, okay. Then it was accept this trade or you're going on waivers. I said, okay. It's a rite of passage to get fired from MSG. Larry, how did you see this trade go down, and what are your thoughts on the return?
Well, I think it's best for both parties that finally, this relationship was severed. It was a productive one. There was a productive captaincy, but not this year. And I don't think we have to relitigate this. But I thought it was interesting that when Jacob talked at that same press conference, which he did after he was traded, he said that I chose my family, and I chose my family first, and I would do that I would do that all the time, and that I think just confirmed what I have been writing the entire time. He chose his family. That's fine, but he also. Look, you can't have a lame duck captain. We've talked about this for months. I think it's much healthier for Jacob Trouba to be out of this situation. I think it's healthier for the Rangers to be out of this situation too. The last few months were unfortunate, but his stay in New York was productive. He was a good Ranger. He was a good Ranger captain, and it's unfortunate that it ended this way, but. I think both parties will benefit from this.
Yeah, that's how I would sum it up. You saw what it did to them, Larry. It's interesting. I wonder if that last week of training camp that you've brought up a couple times, maybe something happened there. Maybe there was another push to have him moved, and
maybe
whatever it could have been. But that's something's been off with this team, so you make some changes. Especially when expectations are high, and it can't be easy. It's not an easy league to play in, regardless. It's not an easy thing to do to play the way that he plays with the passion and the physicality. And when you have the feeling like you're unwanted or you're on borrowed time or you're not part of the future, it's nearly impossible. So it's not February yet. They got a little bit of runway still to make some changes. They made a big one. They may make more. I assume they'll make more to try to right the ship, because as far as what's happening on the ice, it is not good.
Yeah. I think Trouba was honest in that press conference, and he had another quote talking about how he was pretty open with the players on the team and with the leadership group in particular about how difficult it was to lead in that sort of situation, knowing things that were made public. And he said that if it wasn't as public as it was and other guys didn't know, he thought it might have been easier for him. But just with the way everything unfolded and how publicly it was, it clearly weighed on his leadership ability. And that was something that I think we all were able to see just from covering the team on a day-to-day basis. I said it on a SNY video after the trade actually happened, but I just hadn't seen the Jacob Trouba that chucked his helmet in December 2022 and turned the whole Rangers season around. And it wasn't even just that. It was, I remember after that game in particular, he was holding back tears of how much it was so apparent how much he cared and how invested he was. And during this stretch, not only did he not talk after every loss, which not every captain does and not everybody always does, but the same emotion just was missing from Jacob Trouba in that regard. And as I've written so many times, I mean, of course, it must have been difficult for him to give his all and commit and give his heart to a team that he clearly felt spurned by for what was kind of dragged out. But obviously that was his own making with blocking the trade in the summer. But
Right.
it was 100% something that needed to happen for not only Jacob Trouba, but for the Rangers locker room as well to try and turn this around.
I think too that the Rangers right now, their leaders, none of them other than Artemi Panarin is playing well. Not one of them is playing anywhere close to the standard they have established for themselves. And so, Brian, you know this, obviously. It is very difficult to lead when you're not playing well. And this is, it's just bouncing back and forth on the Rangers. They're not getting leadership because their best players are not playing well. Their best players are not playing well because there's no leader. It is just reverberating back and forth. They are in just an awful cycle. Something needs, they need something to happen that's good for them, honestly. Even Friday night, they've traded Trouba. It was a difficult day for them. They come out and they beat the Penguins, but it's a 2-2 game late in the game, right? They win it 4-2, and then after the game, Mike Sullivan, the Pittsburgh coach, is talking about this is the worst game we have played for months. We didn't do anything. We didn't do this, and so the Rangers, looking at this homestand that is now over, they look at it like, oh, we've got Montreal, they're 30th. We've got Chicago, they're 32nd. But these teams are looking at the Rangers like, look, we've got this team that is in a free fall. Mm-hmm. Let's get them now. And, they struggled to beat Montreal. They beat Pittsburgh really in one of their best games of the last 3 or 4 weeks. But again, Pittsburgh is saying this is the worst game we've played ever. Then they lose to, Seattle, a meltdown.
Blown 3-1 lead.
Included the goalie not being able to make a save, for one of the few times this year. And then against Chicago, they come out with nothing. They just play with almost no confidence. There is zero swagger to them. There is no physicality to them. Their body language, is bad. They are trapped in a cycle. They need someone to find some light out of this darkness. It's just darkness, and it has been for weeks.
Well, they're over on the boards. Everyone's on the boards. Everyone's handing their problems off. They all need to get out of their comfort zone each shift. Trust the situation, even if it's going to be a low-scoring game. Defend the middle of the ice, get to the middle of the ice, get out of your comfort zone, and skate faster. Like, they're games they win in the past, you could watch 5 minutes of the game and see that they're going to win the game. Now, things happen, so you keep watching the game, but you see who's in control of a game. When they were on their game, they were going to win the game. You looked at it, this game's under total control. They have full control of the game. They'll get a big play at some point. They're not giving much up. It's not like that now. They're searching for something, as you put it, because sometimes it looks like they're waiting.
They don't defend. They do not defend.
The physicality part is bang on, because that helps everything. You'll create offense. You will close defensively. You will be on the same page if everybody commits to just bumping into somebody. It organizes everything on the ice. And the other thing is you have to stop and start. Those are things that they're habits, and they're not doing it. There's turnoffs, there's spin arounds. Center ice position, you can't turn your back on the puck in the D zone. You can't. And it's happened so many times, and a nothing play out of the corner turns into a slot pass for a goal or a grade A. And then it's a scramble. After that, whatever. I mean, you do whatever you can. There's the structure and having the game in control is lost, but it's not because they can't do it. It's they forgot what it is, the fundamental things that all NHLers have to do. The ones that when you're a young skilled player coming up into the league and you feel like you're playing okay and you can handle the pace and whatnot, the coach sends you back to the minors for, because these are the details of the game that matter, that are going to matter. And there's too many to list and talk about right now in a short podcast, but it's all of those things that are missing.
So but let me ask you, because I'm mystified. I don't want to speak for Mollie, but I think she is mystified too. That how does a team go from 1 year embracing coaching, embracing structure, to the next year with essentially the same team, that it looks like they're not coached at all? This is, and again, we've touched on this. Year one with Gallant, spectacular. Year two, he has to go. Early in David Quinn, hey, he's okay. We're doing okay with him. The next year, no, he has to go. What is this with this group?
I'm not in that room. I just think that there needs to be more accountability, not a punishment, but if you don't do these like non-negotiable things, you don't play. And it's sit for a period, and then it's sit for a game.
When you played for Laviolette, you've talked about how much you enjoyed playing for him. Was there that accountability there?
Yeah, I think so. I think there was a guy that wanted to play his way, and he didn't get to play much. And then as the games went later in the season into the playoffs, he'd found himself out of the lineup. A highly paid player, and it just, good guy. We liked him. And he thought he just didn't see eye to eye with the coach. And it's like, your job is to see eye to eye with him. And even if you disagree with him, I've spoken on how I didn't love my role the year we went to the Stanley Cup Finals with Alain Vigneault. I didn't love the role. And in his eyes, that's what was going to get us to the Stanley Cup Final. And he was right. So I could have pouted. I could have tried different things. I wouldn't have been there. I wouldn't have had that chance to play for the Cup. I wouldn't have had an opportunity to learn different things and have that experience. We became a part of it, and thank God I had Don Moore talking me off the ledge a few times during the season, but we had that as well, that leadership. Hey, man, listen. And coming from Dominic, who was an All-American, who everywhere he went, he with limited playing time would get 40 points. Didn't play the whole year before. I had some perspective, so I respected it the hell out of him. He was the one that could come and tell me these things, and I'd be like, all right. He's like, because I need you all in so I can play more, because if you do well and I do well, we're going to play more. And he was right about everything. AV was probably right. You could question different things throughout a game here and there, but his general philosophy, he won a lot of games coaching in the league. He's a smart man. So is Peter Laviolette. And you got to get on board. There's no other option. You can't trade 10 guys. Maybe you can. I don't know, because who knows? But it's not going to work.
Right.
Salvage the season and figure it out.
Well, you mentioned the leadership group, and I do feel like a lot of it falls on the leadership group, and I do agree with Larry that it is hard to lead. But Brian, you were in that 2014 locker room when they traded Ryan Callahan. I'm wondering, what is the dynamic in the locker room when that happens? how does the leadership group respond? What is kind of the cascading, aftermath of trading your captain?
Yeah, that was a tough day, and I remember Danny G took it really hard, but we all did. We loved Callie. We didn't understand
Yeah.
why they wouldn't give Callie the deal, but we were in a different spot.
It's a different circumstances.
We were going up. This team's kind of going down. We're going up, and you get a Hall of Fame player coming back, and you got to go do your job. It's not easy to play.
But in terms of like the leadership group, like did the leadership group address the room? Like, is there a divide and conquer of responsibilities when it comes to that kind of thing? Who's going to speak to the room? Like that's the dynamic that I'm thinking about right now.
Yeah, they were all,
because they need a voice. Whether it's from the leadership group, Laviolette, something, somebody needs to take this season by the horns and get it back on track.
Yeah, we had enough guys where it was sad to see Callie go, but we had enough guys, and we were again trending upwards that it didn't need to be. And Callie wasn't the only guy that spoke in that room. Larry, you can speak to that too. It was Hank would step up and say something. He was a goalie, but then when he spoke, we're going to listen to Hank, or we're going to tell him to shut up, save the puck. But you still had Mark Stahl and Danny G. You had Brad Richards come in, who'd been through a lot. So we had different guys that weren't afraid to say things because we all know it's coming from the right place. This is, another guy's name was in the trade rumors last week was Chris Kreider. I would love to see him just be like, look, this is our team, and it should be his team. And yeah, I guess play better, but he's kind of been banged up. I know what it's like to play with a bad back. It's not easy, and he's built on speed. He can do that. Troach is not afraid to speak his mind. He's seen great players and great leaders.
Johnny Quick is a guy.
Absolutely. He's the number 2 goalie, but
yeah, but we know that he's spoken to the room. Like that's another guy.
And empower some of the young guys. Like we've talked about this kid enough, but Will Cooley, for better or worse, you got to be a leader with your play at least. I don't care how much you say, but keep doing what you're doing because that's a bright spot.
He's a little bit more on the soft-spoken side, but he is leading on the ice. That's for sure.
Yeah, crashing into the post every time he scores. He'll put his whole body through the net to get a goal.
Yeah, no,
he's leading by example, just like that, right?
You're so right. I guess we can pivot to some more positive news. We've got Igor Shesterkin's new deal signed through 2032-33. That's an 8-year, $92 million deal with a cap charge of $11.5 million, a full no move clause throughout. I do think that it was a really smart move for the Rangers to make now, despite the fact that there's so much going on with the team, because I think it could have a really positive effect on Shesterkin, who we've seen has faltered a bit as the Rangers have gotten worse. Now he doesn't have to, think about the contract anymore. And he did actually admit that it was difficult to block out the noise for him, especially after a bad game. So I think it's going to be really good for him. Brian, what did you think of that monstrous deal? And what would you be buying if you would make $11.5 million?
Well, diapers, right? He just had another child. Congrats to him.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a great deal for him. It's a great deal for the team. It's not an insignificant amount. It's the most ever for a goalie. It can be tricky with a goalie making that much money, but I think, Larry, you said it. If it's their best player, you pay him like he's your best player, right? That's your philosophy. I can understand that. To an extent. I don't think it's too much by any means. I think it absolutely had to be done. So it kind of I looked at it like, I'm glad they got it done. They need him.
Yeah.
And the deal, whatever the numbers, blah, 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 it is what it is. I think he was 85 in signing bonus.
Yes.
That's not bad.
Yeah, it's a very front-loaded structure, largely paid out in the signing bonuses. But Larry, were you surprised that the Rangers were able to get him at 11.5 instead of the 12 to 13 that he was projected?
I was startled when I heard the number. I was. I didn't think they were going to get him for a cent under 12, or at least, as you and I talked 11-7, because I thought it was his objective to become the highest paid player on the team, and I thought it was justified. So when I heard the 11-5, it was like, excuse me. So I think the number, again, the last two contracts between the Rangers and Shesterkin, he had the record second contract for a goalie too,
yep.
which was a great deal for both sides, because the 4-year term allowed the Rangers to keep the number down under 6, and it allowed him to go onto the market, now essentially. So it was a win-win, and I think this is a win-win. Also, I think it's obviously a great deal for Shesterkin. He may have taken a little less in order to get the full no move through the entire contract. So that, that may have been, part of the negotiation. But, the fact that they, the percentage of his cap hit is going to be right in line with what Lundqvist was his first year and his final contract. And it's less than what Panarin's percentage the first year of his contract. So it's an equitable deal. The one thing I'll say is that I can say with, assurance that I will not be reporting on the end of the deal, though. I will not when the deal ends. No, I won't. No.
Where the hell are you going, Larry?
Yeah, what do you mean? What do you mean? We're doing this together forever, don't you know?
You better keep tweeting like the Maven.
Yeah, no.
Still tweeting.
No, we don't need any of that.
No.
We love Stan Fischler on this show, but man. I guess who do you think Chris Drury should be targeting from now until the trade deadline? But of course, please be careful. We don't want Ottawa to think that we are soft tampering. So just keep that in the back of your mind as you give your answers.
Look at what he would do. the man who won't be named because of some hilarity that ensued up north of the border.
It was like a visceral reaction.
It's hilarious.
It is. And I don't.
What are you talking about, Michael Andlauer?
I know. I don't want to be disrespectful either. I really don't. But it told on the Senators organization a little bit. I think. I think that they were a little scared for a second there that maybe Tkachuk would hear about this, and I don't know. I don't know Tkachuk at all. I don't know him as a person. I don't know what he's like. But I just think that reaction said a lot more about the state of the Senators than it did about anything else. And it's a little silly.
Brady Tkachuk spoke and said it's not true.
Yeah, he did.
So
yeah.
I don't really care.
But there was nothing to say that he's not that what is not true. The only thing that was reported is that the Rangers are interested. That was the only thing that Larry reported.
I bet you 28 other 29 or 30 other teams are interested.
The entire league. Yeah, the entire league is interested in Brady Tkachuk.
That's like a guy who's dating a really attractive woman and he's looking over his shoulder all the time. Like someone's gonna steal my girlfriend.
That's what I'm saying. It was way more telling about the state of the Senators than it was anything else. But I mean, for the Rangers to have to then pick up the phone and be like, what is this that we're hearing that you're accusing us of soft tampering? That was just
soft tampering.
Yeah, not tampering.
Has that ever been said, Larry?
No, not to my mind.
They invented something. Give them credit.
Oh my God. But yeah, I mean, aside from Brady Tkachuk, which as we know, every single team in the National Hockey League would like to have Brady Tkachuk, including the Rangers. Rangers at the top of the list because he is just quintessential of what they need. I mean, what names would you be exploring if you're president and general manager Chris Drury?
Well, I mean, Larry can look around the league, but I just think that somebody that can bring a team into the fire, somebody that plays with a contagious sort of disposition and abrasiveness.
Yep.
That's, I mean, even short term, if you can, and the more skill and the more, the longer the resume of a player like that still has runway left on their career, even if they don't, geez, like just mix it up a little bit. It doesn't have to be a huge like blockbuster, but there's a number of teams right now that are kind of just spinning their wheels in the standings that are looking for maybe a lot of them are probably looking for that same player.
I
don't know.
Larry, anything to weigh?
No, well, I think they need to add physicality. I think they need to add some attitude to this group. And I think honestly, it's not necessarily who I would target at this point. There's the type of player that I would target, but I think Chris Drury has to be willing to listen on everybody who does not have a no move. Everybody. Now, people, we have to get Zibanejad out, but that's not realistic. It's not. Mika's going to have to be better. That's the answer. Mika's just going to have to rebuild his game. Step by step, he needs to rebuild it, but he's not being traded. He has a no move. He's not waiving it. And right now, you're selling so low on Mika at this point anyway. What are you talking about? So, but for me, and it's just repeating what the Drury Substack message was a couple of weeks ago. We are open for business, and we'll listen on anyone. And do I want Chris Kreider to be traded? No, but you have to be willing to listen. They haven't won with Chris Kreider, right? They haven't. It's the truth. He
probably has some of the highest trade value.
But, I think he has real value attached to him and to his contract. And so, of course, you have to find out what you can get back for him. Of course, you have to find out what you can get back for Keandre Miller at this point. It's not like you're shopping him all over the league, but you need to have this information. There's nobody honestly who doesn't have a no move who I wouldn't be talking about. And honestly, I that doesn't mean that they're trading Will Cooley tomorrow. That doesn't mean that they're trading Lafreniere tomorrow. Doesn't mean they're trading, Braden Schneider tomorrow. But you have to be willing to listen to everything at this point, because this team is in a free fall. And at this point, there's really no end. There's no way to forecast the end to it. They're going into Buffalo tomorrow night, and I'm sure Buffalo is just waiting,
salivating.
Right? I mean, this is their chance to win a game. I mean, Buffalo is one of the teams who should be looking to deal, and I'm sure Kevin Adams is. Nashville obviously should be. They've been a disaster this year. So, and I've said this. I think I said this before. I know I wrote this last week. I'm asking if Steven Stamkos, is unhappy in Nashville, and would he want to come to New York? That's what you talk about a guy who would come in and change the dynamic. Steven Stamkos would. I'm not tampering, Barry. I'm not tampering. There's no tampering, but that's a guy who I would ask about. Right?
Right. Well, I think it's a perfect note to end on. Please, no tampering accusations here.
Stammer just texted me, actually.
Yeah, well, maybe send him a text. Well, thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for joining us. Let us know in the comments what you think about the Igor Shesterkin deal, the Jacob Trouba trade, and who you would like to see the Rangers target between now and the trade deadline. And give us a thumbs up too. And we'll see you next week.